Hey friends, Tim here with Conversations in the Wild, a Maverick River podcast. I believe that this episode is going to be really helpful for you. This is a great resource because we're talking to, at least in my life, in my world of Orange County, a legend. His name is Jim Burns, and he founded HomeWord in 1985, which means it's turning 40 very soon. And HomeWord is a ministry for families, and it has a ton of resources and trainings to build strong marriages, confident parenting, empowering kids, and creating healthy leaders. And Jim has done an incredible job over the past 30-some years really working with couples, children, families to develop really healthy and Christ-centered families. And I know that for me as a parent, I've gotten a lot of great resources and help from him. He's been a great guy to many people, helped many families. He speaks. He has incredible books. It's going to be a great episode for you guys, specifically to get some resources and some understanding on some hard conversations that may need to take place with kids and parenting, and how to talk to your kids about sex and all the things that we don't necessarily know innately, but Jim has done years of research and gives some really practical, helpful information. He's a very funny guy, somewhat of a mentor to me, and I'm thrilled to have him on today's podcast. So please continue to share and enjoy, especially this one, because I'm sure there's other parents that would find value in this episode. So please share it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being a part of the Maverick River podcast. Enjoy. All right, well, welcome everyone. This is Tim and my friend Jim Burns. Jim is an incredible man that has started and founded HomeWord close to 40 years ago now. He focuses his time in ministry on marriages, parenting, and has all sorts of great resources, many books, and teaches all over the place. Jim, welcome, and so glad you're here. Would you just share a little bit about your background and a little bit about HomeWord and your family and all the good stuff?
Sure. Well, great to be with you, Tim, and I'm glad you're doing this. And I love, because I live in the same area and know so many of the same people, they just say so much that good of what you're doing in men's ministry. I got to see it when you were at Mariners. You had me out at breakfast, and that was awesome. You just recently did something for my church at Harbor Point. So anyway, I love that. Well, many years ago, I was raised in a home that was an alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic and a great guy, and that's possible to be both. I wasn't abused. He was the functional alcoholic. He actually made good money. It's funny, I have this memory of my dad pitching to me. He'd bring we had 30 baseballs. My brother played for the Chicago White Sox, so we're a baseball family. And so he would pitch to me, and then I would hit the balls, all 30 of them. And if I missed them, I'd have to throw them back to him. So he'd do that, and then I'd have to run and get the balls, and then he'd just smoke a cigarette. They're at the pitcher's mound, and then I'd bring them back, and I did that. So but coming from a family with alcoholism, I was a dysfunctional family. We weren't a church group, a family at all. And my mom's dad, my grandpa, died when I was 9 months, but he died of cirrhosis of the liver. So we kind of have that part of the dysfunction going. And I don't need to go through my entire life and then what happened. But it's interesting because for me, I think my heart for helping kids and helping parents came from that, because I wasn't one of those church kids. And I got excited about faith when I heard about, I was kind of part of the Jesus Revolution, raised here in Orange County. And so I was a part of, when I saw that movie, I just bawled, because I went, whoa, I was there. But my heart, realizing that there's a lot of kids and parents who kind of don't know what they're doing. What was funny was when I was the youth pastor at what's now Mariners, but it was called South Coast Community at the time. It's on that property. I can remember saying to Doug Fields, who, I think some of your people on your podcast would know him. He had been in my youth group, and then he was an intern for me. And I said, Doug, if these parents are dropping their kids off, and if the kids could drop the parents off, I think we could probably do more good. We could kind of help some of these parents. So there was kind of a switch for me where I wanted to help families succeed. And I kind of thought, I was speaking to about 250,000 kids at the time. That was what I did. I was a youth speaker around the country, around the world. Wow. And then I moved to trying to help parents. And I even remember my literary agent going, "You're nuts. This is your, you do the kid thing." But I'm really glad I changed to parents because, today's parent has so many difficulties. It's just different. The culture is different. Kids are different. I mean, we were 6 and 11 and 12 and 15, but we were never their age. So anyway, out of that births HomeWord. And so we have 4 values: strong marriages, confident parents, empowered kids, and healthy leaders. And so all of our content, all of what we do from our resources, it's all directed at those 4 values. And I love what I'm doing.
That is awesome. So you had mentioned, but I got to have you speak a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, actually, at the men's breakfast, and it was an interesting topic. But I called the porn expert, Jim Burns.
Thanks.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding because I know that you had shared that someone. I think I was their book, Fred.
Oh, no, it was Steve Arterburn and Fred Stoker.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, they
Every
they
battle.
dedicated it to me, and I'm like, oh, great. This isn't even. I have lots of issues. We could talk all day on this podcast for those. That's not one of them. And I go of all things I get a book dedicated to. It was that one. Every man's battle. In fact, it's funny. It's right around here because I'm going to interview Steve Arterburn up next for my podcast in our podcast studio next week. It's kind of funny.
Oh, cool. So, but yeah, it was amazing having you on, and the topic we had you talk about was
Yeah.
more, healthy
Yeah.
intimacy and
Yeah.
connection.
Right.
Guys, obviously, every man's battle. Sexual integrity we talked about,
Right.
but more, I think where I want to go today is hearing from you in some of the areas that you just mentioned with marriages and confident
Yeah.
parenting, leadership. But before we even get into some of your specialties, I would love, because I do believe HomeWord indirectly is a men's ministry.
Mhm.
And, I just love to hear,
Yeah.
your beliefs about why it's important to have healthy men's ministries and
Yeah.
really to connect with the guys and
Yeah.
help men, and how that, it really does overlap with HomeWord. So I'd love to
Oh,
hear.
no, it does. I mean, strong marriages and confident parents, both of those actually relate perfectly for men. I don't think it's as easy for men, frankly, Tim. I really don't. I mean, I think women are more natural at being a parent, and sometimes even when it comes to the emotional side of intimacy and things like that. So I find that a lot of guys out there really want to be today's dad. They want to be a really good dad. They want to have a good marriage. They kind of didn't have a lot of role models growing up. And, I spoke several years for a men's ministry called Promise Keepers.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the things that my friend Randy Phillips, who actually was the president of Promise Keepers, he did the Million Man, event and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of in it during those time period. But he would say, a man is not a man until his father tells him. And then it was always right before I came on, and men would start weeping. I'm trying to be funny. I'm kind of trying to relate to guys on, I'm kind of doing, 5 minutes of stand up right before I'm going to get into my point. And these men would weep because they would often say, I didn't have that role model. So they had some wounded dad things.
Sure.
So what I'm finding is, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about what you're doing and whatnot, because you're helping put men together. They're building a community of men who really want to, grow in their families, on the family side, because that's what I'm interested in. But I really think it's a neat season, because I think these men want that. And so HomeWord tries to provide, I mean, we both, Doug Fields and I, who speak at our Refreshing Your Marriages, we say we're guy friendly, because it's not going to be a lot of, kind of touchy feeling stuff. I mean, some guys have trouble in the church. They're not used to the singing. They don't want to raise their hand, whatever they do at their church,
Right.
or kneel, and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important that men have a place where it's safe for them to not only talk about how to become a better dad or a better husband. Obviously, all men are not, married and with kids, but I think it's really an important place for them to build community. The men's ministry that I'm a part of is 5 guys. We've been together for 22 years. You would know every one of their names. In
Yep.
fact, you go to one of their houses all the time in Utah. So
Well, not enough.
yeah. So, but those guys, we go fishing, we talk, we laugh, we burp, we talk about stuff, but we also challenge each other to be the best we can be, and we challenge each other with accountability, and we talk about our issues. And at first we didn't do that. We talked about sports and politics and read a little Bible. And then one of the guys, courageous guy, opened up his kimono and said, I'm not doing well in my marriage. And we all jumped in, and then it became that safe place because one guy was willing to say that. And I think men need that. So,
Yeah.
I'm kind of going all over the place, but to me, when men, like I was thinking about my grandson, and when my son-in-law, if he, you know, gets tied in to church in a big way, then his son is going to follow him. If he doesn't get tied in, as much as his mom is all into it, grandma and grandpa, all that kind of stuff, he's going to follow his dad. And so I was really focusing the other day. I was having a good conversation with him. It wasn't a lecture one, but it was just simply like going, "Hey, dude, no pressure on you, but James is going to follow you, whatever you do." And it's hard. And sometimes church isn't guy friendly, and that's why I think we don't have as many men's ministries as we have women's ministry. Women like to get together and they like to sing and cry and do all those kind of fun things that they do. That's awesome. I mean, my wife has been teaching a Bible study for like 14 years. It's an awesome Bible study. Men don't tend to do that until they all of a sudden go, "Whoa, I like this guy that I was with," and we talked about motorcycles or whatever it was, in terms as friends. So I think it's really cool for men's ministry. So yeah, HomeWord does all kinds of things to kind of come alongside the church to help families succeed. And yeah, we're nobody's going to put us down as, "Oh, this is a men's ministry." We're here to come alongside and help. But again, my background is some of the greatest times of my ministry to adults has been back in the Promise Keepers days. Amazing, amazing movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of conversations about that the traditional Sunday morning church environment
Yeah.
isn't necessarily men friendly. It's,
No.
not necessarily comfortable singing and raising our hands and then sitting and hearing someone talk at us for 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
on even more so, guys get in a circle and talk about what's going on is just not our natural
No.
environment.
No.
The name of this podcast is Conversations in the Wild, which is basically
Yeah.
guys do life more shoulder to shoulder out doing something in the wild, where that's
Yeah.
where we tend to open up. So it's really creating an intentional environment for guys to do life, to dig into God's word and
Yeah.
to live it out. And so
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right in that. And the work that you're doing is pivotal to resourcing the men's ministries
Yeah.
that I'm a part
Sure.
of.
Sure.
And because really the values, some of them are the same.
Yeah.
We want to
No, it
build
is.
who
Exactly.
are having healthy marriages.
No,
And
exactly. And men do it differently. I was speaking, I was telling you before the podcast that I was speaking at a school, Christian school locally, and I was
yeah.
talking about sex and sexuality, and I was talking about the difference, how guys help their kids and how women, for one thing, women take the lead by far.
Hmm.
But I was talking to this guy and he goes, my wife took my daughter away and they had a nice dinner and they got an outfit and then they sat face to face and they talked and, giggled and all this kind of stuff. He said, "What do I do?" And I said, "Well, what is your son into?" And he said, "Baseball." I said, "Well, I would drive him to the Padres Stadium. You don't have to look at him." And I would talk about some of these things. And then I would drive him to Angel Stadium. Then I would go to the Dodger Stadium. And then if you really want to do a cool road trip, go on up to San Francisco Giants, and then maybe scoot over wherever Oakland is going to land. I just heard that they're not going to play Sacramento for a bit before they go to Las Vegas. But
Oh,
but the cool thing is, I said, you don't even have to look at your son, and your son's not going to engage like your daughter was. And he goes, "That's okay." And I go, "No, sure, that's okay. You're now safe." Because when I said to those people, "How many of you received good, positive, healthy sex education?" There were two women, no guys, nobody had good, healthy sex education from their parents. And that's random because sometimes people do, but not many. So they don't have a model. They don't know how to say it. And so then they think they have to go back to the way, their wives, do it. And you don't have to buy your son a outfit, and definitely don't, I mean, wild. Do something that's wild. I know dads who have gone on surfing trips. I know dads who have gone, shooting, whatever they're going to do it, make it a guy thing. And the church is finally waking up, and you're a leader in this. The church is finally waking up to do guy stuff. That's not, what the church has been doing for years and years.
no, I love that. I think my wife and I were at one of the parenting workshops that you did a couple years ago, And I'd love to kind of re-ask. I mean, you started to share some of that, but um, to the dads, what would
Yeah.
you say is the right time to have that sex talk? And I mean, you kind of just shared, the second part of the question is where,
Yeah.
which you can double down on, but
Sure.
then also I think something that you shared is it's not necessarily a one and
Oh
done.
no. Oh no.
So I'd
No.
just kind of
Well,
share it with the guys.
yeah. Well, I think what guys have to understand is they don't have to be the big authority on it. They're already freaked out. When I was talking to that group of yours, they looked like they were junior hires. Our eyes were all like big as we're talking about sexual integrity. I didn't do it. I'd say a word. It might be pornography. And I wasn't really talking a lot on pornography, but I might bring it up. And as soon as I did it, heads are down, whatever. I mean, they were feeling weird. But what I always say is I would rather have 101-minute conversations with my kids than one 100-minute conversation, if you know what I'm saying. So it's a continual dialogue. And I always say you start at age 3 and you say, this is your body. God made your body. God made boys and God made girls. And then, yeah, the guys feel awkward about it, saying, every little boy has a penis, every little girl has a vagina. Probably the first time you've had vagina, maybe, or penis on your podcast.
Yeah,
Um, but by saying that, the kid is 3 or 5. They don't even think it's awkward because they're just, a little kid. It's the dads who feel awkward going up, whatever. But we've got kids at 11 running around calling their private parts their wing-a-ding-ding because nobody told them the real word, right? So that's what dads can do. Dads can be those guys. And again, even the fact that God created our sexuality. A lot of dads miss that. I call it kind of a theology of healthy sexuality, but we want to teach our kids that God created you, and you were created in God's image, and all that. So many kids are so confused, or they're promiscuous, partly because they didn't hear from mom and dad anything. So I think dads have to take part of the lead. And like for me, I have all daughters. So with them, there were things that I need. I mean, I wasn't going to talk to them about their period, but Cathy, that's her job. And the kids didn't want to talk to me about their periods. But what they wanted to know was, how should a boy treat me? And I would even say to them, even talk about what they were wearing and not try to be all negative and whatever. But, I'd say, guys, look at skin. And I never wanted to make a guy a bad guy, because we do that. Oh boy, don't even, you see a boy, they all want one thing, whatever. And I don't think that's true. I mean, it's close, but it's not true. But I would say to my kids, you know what? You don't have to dress like a an Amish person, but the fact is that how you dress, how you relate. But you want a guy who treats you special and has kind of a radical respect for you. And that's an important thing. You and I, before the podcast, again, we were talking about Young Life. I was the area director when I was at Princeton. I did my grad work at Princeton. I was the area director for Mid New Jersey Young Life, and I can remember a time where some of the girls said, we want to get together with Jim, just me. So I was the leader of this school, and that's what they wanted to talk from their dad. None of the dads had ever talked to them about it, and they wanted to talk to me about, you know, about the guys, and they wanted to talk to me about relationships and all that. And because I was open about it, those girls were so grateful for that. Well, I wish their dads were having those conversations. They can be. Again, a little easier talking to girls, about some things on that. And then, but with dads with guys, they still have to. And again, they may not have the amazing conversation, but if you're going to have a 100 conversations with 1 minute, you can get it through. It's really key, though. I think it's really key. And dads have to make it happen. They've got to suck it up. It's going to be awkward. When I talk to I could talk to thousands of kids on sex. And then my daughter, Christy, she said this so well. She goes, Dad, I know you think you did really a good job with us on sex, talking about sex. She goes, but your bald head sweat, your ears turn red, you stuttered. And I did. I mean, I didn't stutter when I was speaking to students. I
Right.
stuttered when I was, talking to my own kids, because I'm like, I can't believe we're having this conversation.
Right.
You do it anyway.
Yeah, you got to do it. And what would you say is too late? Because I'm at the age where now a lot of my friends and our kids are creeping into the fifth, sixth, seventh
Right.
grade.
Right.
Puberty's right around the corner. And traditionally you would say, oh yeah, that's puberty is when you begin the conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, you just that needs to start. You're
Yeah.
saying as early as 3. That doesn't mean you give the full story, but
No, no, no.
along the years, you add more part A, part B, part.
Right.
I that's kind of how I said it. I'm with my oldest, who's 11. I'm at probably the second conversation. Third's right around the corner.
Right.
But and something you said I think is important in that um, when you don't have these conversations, what are some of the ramifications
Yeah.
and
Well,
how much is too late? Like
right,
how
right. Well, I mean, I agree with you. You surely don't give them everything when they're younger, but you have a better shot at it if somebody, one of your listeners on this podcast or whatever is younger, cool, start now. If they're 11, then that means there's a very good chance that they've already seen porn because the average boy sees porn at age 10. You can Google me on this. I just had to look it up for something else.
I
And the
heard
average girl sees it at late 11. See, that really has changed with girls. So if that's the case, a dad and a mom want to have those kind of conversations before they're introduced to something like that, right? And then puberty changes it all because now their bodies are going through things. They boys and girls looked at the opposite sex as kind of still using an old word, cooties or whatever. But today, now they're at that age, they're beginning to kind of like all kinds of changes are going on in their body. Like even when you say puberty, puberty happens not when hair is growing where hair wasn't or where you get your period or whatever. Puberty happens earlier inside. So that's why the parents, I think, have to have some of those, some of that dialogue and you test the water. So you do it, you talk about what's age appropriate. But by 11, what I'm saying these days is, that's when you want to talk about sexual integrity. That's when you want to have the conversations because they're having it at school. And I don't care if they're going to the, most strictest Christian school or they're homeschooled. The number one place kids find sex, and they're curious, so they find it on the internet. So I mean, I use the internet every day, but I don't trust the internet when it comes to some of this stuff. So I want to be that voice because, like, for example, I have a book coming out in August called, Student's Guide to Sexual Integrity. I never thought an old guy like me would be writing another book on sex. In fact, I brought a woman into it who's younger and has a great youth ministry background from North Point Church in Atlanta, and she's a great friend to help me because I only use her face. My face isn't even on it, but I wrote the book. But I had a chapter called Culture, Gender, and Authority. And what I'm saying is, who is the loudest voice? It's usually culture. And it's partly because parents aren't talking about it. Or it's just they go, well, this is just a mom thing because mom seems to be all into it, but dad kind of, is distant. And what I'm saying is, no, if you're going to talk about it, be a it doesn't have to be louder voice, but be a stronger voice than culture, because culture changes. I mean, my gosh. I mean, I'm not just talking about, gender identity, but I'm talking about anything. Culture just changes and it changes all the time. And with that changing culture, that's where they're getting their messages. So be the stronger voice. And dads I realized with me, as when my kids were younger, I by me talking about that and being willing to talk about it, my girls would then talk to me about it. And I see the same thing with the sons. So yeah, important. And the authority is also the scripture. So that's where you have to give them that theology of healthy sexuality, because the scripture has been around a lot longer than your friend who thinks they may be gay because 2 weeks ago somebody told them they were because they dressed they don't dress in pink. They're a girl and they dress, they like boots or they like more guy stuff, or it's a guy who's in the chorus, and so maybe he is gay because he doesn't play sports or whatever it might be. That's culture.
right. So along the lines of fathering, and we just had some kind of insight and wisdom that you gave specifically to when a dad should engage in the sex talk. And one thing you said that I think is important for the guys is oftentimes it's like dad talks to the boy if you have boys and girls, and mom talks to and you're saying for the most part yes, but there are still moments where the father should have conversations with their
Oh yeah.
daughter.
Yeah, like I mentioned that my wife Cathy, she took the girls at age 11. They went and did their, they read a book, and they kind of went through all this stuff. And it was each girl took it differently. One went, "Oh, this is amazing," and the other one went, "I don't want to." She's now a clinical psychologist, which is hilarious. But she goes, "Do not say this, Mom. Stop right now. Stop reading this."
Yeah.
And then the other one was like, I already know this. My sister's already told me. So, I mean, it's funny how that, personality is. But
Right.
for me at 16, their first, and we were weird, I'm sure, and for Orange County, but we didn't want them to do exclusive dating until they got to be around 16. And that was kind of an earned thing. So,
Mm,
and their first date was me. And so one of them, where do you want to go? One wanted to go to San Diego, and we stayed in a really cool hotel, and went to the beach and did all this stuff. But we talked about what we call the integrity code. The next one wanted to go to Palm Springs, so we went to Palm Springs. We ate fun food. But it was a dad-daughter date, and then the other one wanted to go to Hollywood. I was trying to find a cheap hotel in Hollywood. That was a rough
yeah.
one. But we had great conversations but more dad-daughter conversations. We didn't hit the periods, and we didn't hit that kind of stuff. We hit more more of a guy from a dad perspective, but also that's where I kind of spent more time talking to them about what sexual integrity was going to be like, because I let them know they're going to be tempted, just like, I mean, all kids are going to be tempted, people are tempted, and so you almost have to role play, and I thought that was important.
That's good. I would like you to talk um, more about parenting as to the dads, like any great insight and wisdom on just generalized, however you want to go, or just something that you've been writing about or teaching about
Yeah,
lately to the
yeah,
dads. What
yeah.
are the best
Yeah.
things you can do?
Yeah, it's funny. I could give you my message that I'm giving in 2 weeks in Guatemala. I'm at a big church, bigger church than the church you're from. It's an amazing church, and I get to talk to the men every time. And their men's group is one of the bigger men's groups in the world.
Man, you
And I
church.
know I need to have. I was thinking about that seriously. Great leadership. I mean, they have very few churches have a men's pastor, as you know,
Yes.
and their men's pastor is just awesome. He's hitting it out of the ballpark. But I'm talking about dads this time, and one of the things, and I'm going to talk about the power of being there. And what I want to say to dads is your presence really, really matters. And my dad came to every one of my games. Again, here I am talking about an alcoholic who didn't know Jesus, and the guy was so influential in my life. And part of it was because he worked 7 days a week. We didn't go on vacations in terms of what he did, but he was there for me. He was present.
Mm,
And so I think dads sometimes think, well, I don't have to be there. I'm providing for them, so I'm making the money, so I'll just let my wife go to their games or their dance recitals and all that. And I'm going, no, 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 no. I think it's the power of being there. Jesus did that. Jesus said, let the little children come and don't hinder them. Well,
right.
that was weird. 2,000 years ago, rabbis didn't hang out with kids or even women. And here he was with parents and he was with these children. And we now look at that. Oh, isn't that cool? There's a lamb around his neck and he's doing this thing. No, he was going against the culture of the day big time by welcoming these kids. Well, he even blessed them, and you bless them by, he was touching them and blessing them. He appropriate touch, obviously, but I mean, dads can do that. So sometimes dads go, I'm not as good of a parent as my wife is and all that. No, they're actually, all studies show that the value of dad's presence in their life. Kids are, if a dad is present in their life, and also if a dad speaks spiritually into their life,
Mm,
less sexual promiscuity, just on the practical side. This is a study out of Columbia. It's not even a study, Christian study. Less sexual promiscuity, less drug and alcohol abuse, better grades. Well, what does that mean? Integrity. So, the integrity and security comes. So the Bible says, the man of integrity walks securely. And I think the man of integrity who walks securely will have kids who walk securely. So dads being engaged in the life of their kids um, is important. I did, I don't know what my grade would have been. It sure wouldn't have been an A. But, I started when the kids were more junior high and high school. I started going on dates with them. And it's not just because it's a dad-daughter thing. But, we go eat. Half the time we talked about snowboarding or some guy that, they had an interest in, or, just goofy stuff. But I kind of always had a thing, some stuff I wanted to. And then it would happen. Then they'd go, Dad, what do you think about this? Well, as a matter of fact, and then we'd have these great conversations. And I still do that. My kids are, now married and I have grandkids and all that. I still try on a monthly basis to get a time. One of my daughters I get with this week, and then the other daughter actually even set it up with for next week. But that's where good conversations happen.
that's real.
So presence matters. It's the power of being there. And funny enough, alcoholic cigarette smoking, non-Christian, taught me that, my dad. So
Yeah.
really influential. Yeah.
Yeah. For you, even dad was out there playing catch with you.
Yeah.
And his presence was there. And like you said, he was at all the games and he was really involved in your life. And
Yeah.
so
Well, he showed me sometimes. I remember when I was 12, I was on the all-star team and I was the cleanup batter. And so it's the bases are loaded. We're down by one. And I struck out looking. And as anybody who knows baseball goes, oh, that's not a good thing, right? And,
right.
and honestly, I think at least two strikes I didn't swing. I freaked out. And so I go, oh, my dad's going to kill me. And I'm crying, you're 12. And so you're in the, and, my dad comes up to me and he just goes, Jimmy, not a good ending, but you had a great year. Let's go get some hamburgers and let's go get some fries and a milkshake. And I'm proud of you. Well, you know what? Whoa. I mean, that's kind of a God thing
Yeah.
because, I struck out looking. Well, we do some pretty awful things in our life sometimes. And God's, there are consequences sometimes. We lost the game. There were consequences of that. But,
Sure.
but my dad showed me God's unconditional love, the love of a father, and we don't get that from many others. I have a phrase right here. I'm in my office today, not in our podcast studio. In the office, and it says I got this from Young Life days, but every child needs at least one person who is irrationally positive about them. And
Mm,
you with your parent as a parent, you've got to put kids with discipline. I've got my daughter Heidi, who I love and adore. She was here last kind of over Christmas. She needed to scan something, and she goes, "Whoa, Dad! I've had this thing up here since before Heidi was born, right?"
right.
And she goes, "Dad, you're that person for me." What she didn't see was, the tears. My eyes welled up with tears. I'm like, and yet I had to, you know, give her consequences. We had to go through things, but I want to be their cheerleader, and I think dads a when a dad is a cheerleader, when a dad is present. So it's not rocket science. You don't have to memorize, the entire, Old Testament or something. You just simply have to be there. And I think and you show God's love by being present and being their cheerleader.
That's good. I think that is helpful for guys, especially fathers, because sometimes we feel like mothers will take on the nurturing and
Yeah.
the affirming, supportive, but
Right.
and we'll do the criticism, we'll do the coaching, and we'll
Yeah.
do the hard conversations and
Right.
suck it up, and you got to work harder, study harder, this, that, and
Right.
the
Right.
other. The reality is, they need to hear it from both parents,
Exactly.
and then the father affirming, the father saying, "Hey, you should have swung for that last pitch, but you had an awesome season, great
Yeah.
game. Let's
Right.
go celebrate." Those are
Yeah.
important moments
Oh, they are. No,
for us dads to just.
no.
Sometimes we miss the opportunities, and it's just like a layup. It's like not swinging at the third pitch, dude. Your kid just set you up for a home run
Right.
parenting moment, and you missed it. So it's
Yeah.
encouraging for us
Yeah.
guys to go, hey, it's not just being present. That's obviously pivotal, but it's taking the opportunities.
Yeah.
Like you even said, hey, have the conversation on the way to a ball game because he loves baseball. So whether it's the sex talk or just
Yeah.
talking to him about school and he's
No.
struggling or this, that, and the
Sure.
other.
No, well, no, John Townsend, who lives in our community, is a counselor and a great guy. He used to take walks with his kids around the block. He go, let's go for a walk. He now says it was to get out of helping his wife do dishes, but that's another story. We won't talk about that. I'm throwing him under the bus. But he said those were the times they had the conversations.
Yeah, it's
Dad,
good.
what do you think about whatever? And I even think dads have to have the guts to apologize. Let's say that the dad did something goofy, or they screamed and yelled, or they did it because they'd had a hard day at work or something. I think you go up to your kids and you go, hey, you know what, that was all about me and that was not about you. And sure, you didn't get your homework done, or you talked back to your mother, or you slapped your sister, or whatever it might be, but that I went too strong on you, and I really apologize for that, because that was about me. I was going, and then even saying, I'm kind of having some trouble at work, and I'm sure not blaming that, but I need to pull it together. Well, what they did was they just showed incredible integrity. And
Yes.
men sometimes go, well, I'm not a person of integrity. Well, be an authentic person. Kids don't need you to be perfect. They don't even expect you to be perfect, but they do want integrity and authenticity. Men can do that.
Yeah. I'm trying to do that more often, and I've definitely apologized more than once to my kids. And funny story is about 2 weeks ago, I was driving my kids to school, and this person just totally cut me off. I mean, it was terrible. And my middle finger might have
Right.
is like uncharacter. I
Right.
rarely flip anyone off. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
past like
Right.
have some
Yeah.
integrity here. And all three kids were like, whoa, I've
Yeah.
never seen dad do that. My
Right.
little
Right.
girl, she's 6. I don't even know if she understood. She just knew it was bad. She didn't know what it means. She just knew it was bad. So fast forward, they didn't like sometimes my oldest is 11, he reprimands me for, why are you touching your phone when you're driving, dad? He lets me
Yeah.
know I'm breaking the
Yeah.
law and that kind of thing.
That's cool.
I didn't get scolded as much, but my wife shares this story a week later and she's like, hey, I was playing Mario Kart with the kids and Greenlee got cut off by one of, Mario cut her off. And she's like, hey, is it okay if I flip off? I was
Is
like,
that the best
oh,
story?
no. And
Only
she's
out of the mouth of your wife,
like,
too. It's
don't
good.
tell dad, but he might have done that last week. And so my wife, of course, brought it up and I was
Oh,
just,
so good.
but it was another reminder of like, they are sponges. They are what?
Sure, sure. And if that happens, that life happens. Life is messy.
Right.
Nobody's perfect.
Right.
So, it's more, that becomes a learning lesson from them because they go, wow, dad even messes up and there's better ways to cope with stress or, issues. And but when you say, hey, you know what, I blew that time and I
No, I told him the guy shouldn't have cut me off and he
so good.
no,
It's so
I
good.
did. We did have a talk that's not
Yeah.
something inappropriate, and I shouldn't have done that. And
Right. It's great.
it's
And
a good learning.
in that moment, Tim, you showed them leadership, and dads have to lead. And you don't lead out of yelling, screaming, biting, shouting. You lead out of integrity. And dads don't get that because what happens, especially guys, because what we do is we tend to, to go heavy on the discipline, like you say, or more like screaming or we get our way because we're bigger and tougher, but we don't have that's not how we lead with integrity.
Right.
And yeah, every so often you got to do that. I mean, I'm not saying you don't,
Yeah,
but
sometimes you do, but I think it's the moments where there's stillness and there's quiet where you can actually really use some words in a calm,
yeah,
loving way that really
right,
impact
right,
hearts and souls. So I love it. The other thing that's big with HomeWord that I think it'd be cool to talk about a little bit is just us guys in marriage. That's
mhm,
definitely a massive issue on a national level. I think it's around 50% divorce rate, but then Orange County I've heard it's north of 70, but I've also heard that's not a true statistic.
yeah,
Either way, it's bad. So I'd love to talk about
yeah,
marriage and how you can just give some practical wisdom
right,
and tools for us guys in loving our wives well.
yeah. Well, guys get discipline. I mean, we grew up, we were playing, sports, and not that everybody's a sports person, but we get discipline. Some of the guys who are in the military, I mean, they get discipline, but we don't discipline ourselves. Paul said to Timothy, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. And I think sometimes we have to be intentional about our marriage more. So, Doug and I started doing these refreshing your marriages, and one of the things we would ask of the men is, would you be willing to give your wife 1% of your week? Well, that's about 90 minutes. Okay, so you have so many minutes, and it's 90 minutes is that, and then we say, well, go on a date with her every week, and don't wait for her, but you sometimes take the lead. And I said I was doing a marriage conference I do some work for Chick-fil-A, WinShape. I'll do their marriage conferences, and I was just over there not too long ago. It's in the Atlanta area. And I was talking to a guy, and he said, my wife, she won't go if I do this. And I said, well, you take care of the babysitting and you tell her how that the money is settled, because those are the two things that she's going to be worried about. You
Mhm.
take the initiative. And he goes, well, that's kind of my wife's job. I go, no, it's not. Since when was it your wife's job to take care of the babysitting? You figure it out, and maybe even have to ask your wife, hey, give me some numbers or whatever it might be. But find a way to do that kind of a thing. And I think when men take the initiative, that's a big deal. I think when men So when I think the dating idea, just keeping that going. I also, there's a fascinating book on five sex languages of men and women. My friend
Yes.
Gary Rosberg wrote it. It's a great book. The fourth sex need of a woman, not of a man, but of a woman, is spiritual intimacy. But I think it's one of the least developed areas for men and women. But men don't even know what to do with that.
Right.
And for Cathy and I, we started something years ago where we started praying 20 minutes and kind of reading some inspiration, 20 minutes a week. Now, so I know that sounds really wimpy because some people go, oh, spiritual leaders must spend 2 hours a day, together in marriage praying. No, but you know what, Tim? That I almost think the anointing of God in our marriage and with our kids and even in our ministry happens during that time
Mm,
and sometimes it's not very sexy and sometimes it's not all that great. I went, okay, well, it's like reading Leviticus. You're going to read something in the Bible and you're going to go, yeah, okay, I did it, but I can't remember what I wrote or what I read. But I think if men would initiate some of that, and then the other thing that happens, and it's still happening today, which amazes me with men and women, but most women work too. And so but the man does about a third of the work around the house. And so I tell men, if you want a good romance, then you need to touch your wife. But you also need to touch the dishes, touch the laundry, touch the vacuum, whatever it is, because her world, I mean, she's working like the man is oftentimes, and then they come back and they're doing more work than the man, and the man then goes like, let's be romantic, and the woman's exhausted or she still has 20 things on her to-do list. So I think men have to, I mean, nowhere in the Bible does it say that it's not men can't help with, the chores around the house.
sure.
And sometimes you have to just decide. Doug and I wrote a book called Getting Ready for Marriage, and we said one of the biggest problems we're writing to these people is that ahead of time you don't talk about what are some of the roles that you want to play.
Yep.
And I think you play those roles. You figure out who's going to do what, and some people are better. Cathy's better at finances than me, so she does the finances. I'm kind of happy about that. But at
Yeah.
first, because my dad did it, I just assumed I was supposed to.
Mhm.
And I had to learn to embrace some of her differences. So men can do it. Men can improve the marriages. When in another book that we wrote on the first few years of marriage, we quote a study. It's a fascinating study. When a baby comes, I mean, nobody's not excited about the baby, but when a baby comes, 69% of men said that their marital satisfaction went down, and
Mm,
49% of women. So it's huge. But
wow.
that doesn't mean they don't want to get rid of the kid. What it means is that they haven't figured out how to, make it work, make the discipline. They're going to do that at work. They're going to, if you have to schedule, the date or schedule sex, whatever it is.
Right.
But men can take the lead in that, and they don't. They sometimes become all of a sudden at home they're kind of wimps. Cathy said that to me one time. It was kind of funny because here I am, a leader in different ways, and oh, this was like years ago, and she goes, "You're kind of a wimp at home." And I go, "What?" So my wife called me a wimp, and I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You don't take the lead enough, So and it's not like they have to. I'm not one who says, "Oh, the men are the leaders in everything that they do," and you should open the refrigerator this way, or you shouldn't. That's crazy. I just think that men have to bucket up, kind of lead when it comes to some of the marriage things. And if they're women, like to go to marriage conferences, or they want to go to, if they happen to be local where you're at, they need to probably, the men go, hey, let's go to Marriage Matters on Saturday night once a month and have a great time, because he maybe isn't thinking that way, but his wife is. And so you get a lot of points by doing that. Plus, you're going to learn something. I tell men, read a marriage book a year. You would do this for your business. Well, your business isn't as important as your marriage. So read a marriage book a year, and if you have to read it together if you can. And that there's what you're doing as a man is you're showing your spouse that you're there, and you're going to do stuff even that they know you don't like. I mean, men don't read as much, so fine, read a book.
I love that. I want to double click back on, you said one of the things that you two do is you read 20 minutes a week, and that kind of, I think you tied it to being a spiritual leader,
Yeah,
which is a biblical thing that we
yeah,
want to be. Men, we're called to be the biblical,
yeah,
spiritual leaders of the home. And so what kind of book? What does that
Okay.
look
Yeah.
like?
Well,
You know,
the longer story is weren't doing that. And yet, I mean, my gosh, we're in ministry. So I'm praying with guys and she's praying with women and, we're praying, but we weren't praying that much together. And we were with some mentors because we didn't come from Christian homes, neither one of us. So there were these mentors. They lived in San Clemente here. And we would go over to the house about 4 times a year. And we would just talk. And usually about parent. They had 3 kids who were older than us. Jim and Manya Slevko, I don't know if you know that name, but they were kind of icons here in Orange County. They've now both passed away, and a deep loss for us. But one day, it wasn't even on our list because we'd always have a list. But I said, hey, what do you guys do for spiritual intimacy? Now, Jim was on the board of Westmont. He ran a camp called Yosemite Sierra, up in the, up above, kind of Fresno near Yosemite, Bass Lake. And he smiles and he goes, oh, we do 20 minutes a week, as if that was good. Now the bubble in my head goes, 20 minutes, that's kind of wimpy. You're like a spiritual leader. You only do 20 minutes. And the same bubble goes, well, you're not even doing that, Jim.
right.
And so then we went on to talk about parenting. We get in the car and Cathy goes, you know that 20 minutes thing? I'd kind of forgotten about it. She goes, I want that. And so I said, being the incredible spiritual leader that I am, I said, oh, Cathy, I just don't want to do another Bible study. I don't want to, I don't want to prepare, blah, blah, blah. And I said, would you do it? She
Oh,
goes, as a matter of fact, I will. So because what she had talked to Manya about was that they read a book together. I mean, it wasn't like prepping, right? So we say, as we're coming home, and we live 10 minutes from their house, we decided we would do it on Sunday nights. And so the next Sunday, I'd totally forgotten. I'm, showing what a dork I am on this. And I'm watching a Laker game. And you got to just know that if I'm watching a Laker game, I don't want to be, I definitely don't want to read a spiritual book.
no.
And Cathy takes the remote control and puts it on pause. And she goes, okay, we're going to do this. She's all like happy. And I'm like, I mean, it's not like I didn't want to. I mean, I just wasn't that motivated.
Right.
I went, okay. I go, and then afterwards I can watch the game. Yeah. And so anyway, we did it. I wouldn't say it was amazing, but she had a devotional book. We read the scripture devotional book, and then we prayed for our family. And that was cool. I mean, it was neat to do. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't lights, whatever. And then we kept doing it. And I started actually even really looking forward to it. Now we've had fights in the middle of it because she said something and it triggered me or I triggered her. But we laughed because we ended up writing a book called Closer. It's the only book Cathy and I've ever written together. And it's 52 weeks, 20 minutes. And we challenge couples to do it. And what we laugh at is I tell people, you don't need to buy the book, just do 20 minutes, because people write to me and they never go, hey, it was the content in the 4th session, that just changed their life. It's wow, already we're beginning to see changes in our spiritual life because we're praying together. And my husband said he wouldn't pray, but he would listen to the stuff. And then I could pray and he'd be silent. And now he's praying with me. I hear that all the time. It became at one time, it was the best-selling marriage devotional in the world. And it was kind of wimpy because you should probably do something like that every day, on our own life. And it was once a week. And so we still do it. Like when I go to Guatemala, I mentioned I was going to Guatemala. When I go to Guatemala, we'll have our Closer time, but we'll have it. This time we'll do it more, like FaceTime and stuff because it's cheaper than making a call.
Right.
But we'll do it, and it's not always great. I mean, I'm not telling anybody that's like the greatest thing that's ever happened, but the discipline of doing that is radical. And Cathy loves that. When Cathy and I spoke at Mount Hermon together just recently at a Christian Conference Center up in the Bay Area, and she said, that's when Jim wants to pray with me and engage spiritually. That's sexy. And I'm like, I don't think of that as sexy. I mean, I'm glad I do it. I mean, it's not like I'm anti that at all, but she sees it as sexy. I see it as, checking off something on my list. So men can do it without thinking it's all that sexy because their spouses really like that.
Yeah. Well, if their wife thinks it's sexy, then that's probably a win-win.
Right. Yeah. She never called me sexy. Let's just get that straight. She didn't
Oh,
call me sexy. She called reading the scripture and praying sexy.
yeah. Well, that works.
No,
That's helpful.
yeah.
I think that's I mean, I think we've heard a few different things that you've strongly suggested: a weekly date night,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
intentional time for you call it Closer time, and we'll put the link to that book and several of your
Yeah.
other resources and books. I know you have you have many actually kind of what we were talking about earlier with parenting and the
Yeah.
conversations around sex and sexual integrity. So
Right.
we'll put all those on there. Man, thank you so much
Oh,
for spending time with us,
no.
and
Well,
any encouragement that you want to leave us with,
well,
guys.
my no, my pleasure. First of all, and let me just say again, I am thrilled with what you're doing. I'm thrilled with what you're doing locally. I know you're doing it. Our mutual good friend Terry Hartshorn, you're doing it at his church in Park City. I think it's so key to bring men together. My only encouragement would be kind of reviewing. One is men. It's the power of being there with your kids and with your spouse, and don't think you can't do this. You can, but you're jumping in territory that people haven't really helped you through. But do it in community, and
That's
that's why I believe I am like the biggest proponent of what you're doing, because you're finding community. When at my church, with one of the programs that you and Jeff Priest helped put together, there were people sitting around tables connecting, and those guys don't do that. That's not natural for them. So
right.
they come back and go, "Hey, it was awesome." Well, what was so awesome about it? Well, they couldn't remember even some of the programming, but it was that they sat at a table with some guys and laughed and had like-mindedness, and were accepted and loved. And I know that because I'm in my small group of men every Tuesday morning, that I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, and I'm a better Christ follower because of those guys. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful for it. And there's weeks when I still don't want to go,
Hmm.
because I'm like, oh man, they live right by each other, all of them, and I drive in from Dana Point to Newport, and so it's like a 25-minute drive. And oh, there's going to be an hour of driving, and up and back, and I'm being a whiny butt, and then I get there, and it's amazing every single time. So I encourage men to be in community, join a men's group if they can, and and literally grow this way. Great to grow in your business and all these other things, but that's not eternal growth. This
Right.
is eternal stuff, and it's changing the legacy of a family from generation to generation. So that's what you do. Yeah,
Amen. Thank you so much. I'd love it if you would you pray, close in prayer
yeah,
for the guys? That'd
sure,
be
sure. Love to. And plus, you got a lot nicer shirt. I wear a t-shirt today, and you've
that's
got.
Aloha Friday. It's Aloha
Yeah,
Friday.
I know, I know. So well, mine says Hobie, so a surf shop.
Yeah, hey,
That's the closest thing you can get to. He
there,
probably surfed in Hobie, probably surfed in Hawaii sometime. Let me
I'm
pray.
sure.
Almighty God, thank you for men. Thank you for their call and their role in the family, and in the family of God as well. So I pray that you would, through this conversation that Tim and I had, that somebody could make a practical decision, a step in the right direction. Maybe join a men's group, perhaps start praying with their spouse, or going on more dates, taking the initiative. They do it so well at work and other places, but give them the strength and the courage, actually, to do it in their home as well. And bless the ministry that Tim's about, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jim.
Good to be with you.